Welcome, one and all, to the wonderful world of commas. Yes, this is the place where we are going to review those things that you once knew about. Yes, somebody taught you about them at one point, and now you've sort of forgotten about them a little bit. And you've developed some feelings about commas, I'm sure, over the years. We're going to work through those. So you might be here because commas are now a complete mystery to you because you've forgotten why they exist in the first place. Or maybe you're here for a friend who is having difficulties with commas and you're doing some research and you're going to report back to them, and that's fine too because you can get all that information here, which would be great. But overall, I hope that you're here because you just want to improve your writing. Okay, so let's get started. First of all, I have been grading college level papers for nearly 20 years, and I can tell you that students fall into three categories. The first category is that student who is in the minority, knows how to use commas very well. There's very few red marks going on that paper showing, hey, you missed a comma here, or usually whenever they make mistakes is because it's a typographical error. That is a very rare student. It's like the holy grail of students. And it's also the holy grail of people who aren't students, who are professionals, who are in business. I'm also an attorney, and the number of motions and briefs that came across my desk from opposing counsel, even from attorneys who were in my office, really had some major comma errors. So I want to try to help you with that. We're going to cover all the major commas. So who were the other two categories of students? Well, let's see if maybe you fall into one of these two categories. The first type is that student who just uses too many commas. They are in love with commas. They feel like, I'm going to place a comma where my gut is telling me that a comma should go. Let's see here. I've got this sentence. It looks pretty bare. It needs some work. I'm going to throw a comma here and a comma here. What I used to want to do when I was an instructor grading a paper, I would want to take that comma and just shake it out. Shake out all those commas because there were too many of them. And if half of them fell out, then that was probably the right amount for that student to have used. They just used their gut instead of rules to guide them when it came to commas. Then there was student number two. It was almost like they had developed a very strange fear of commas. They might turn in a 3-page paper and it had like 2 commas in it. The comma for them, I believe, now I don't know this for a fact, but I believe had become sort of the monster that lived under their bed or in their closet at night, and it would scare them and they'd be like, oh, commas are terrifying. In fact, I feel like there's something behind me. Is there a comma behind me? I'm starting to get a little creeped out. You would tell me, right, if there was a comma behind me. Okay, just so we know, just let me know if you see a comma behind me because that's terrifying. I want to take you from one of those two categories and I want to put you into the holy grail of comma land. I just made that up. Okay, so let's just start with something quick and easy. I have put a sentence here. There is something wrong with it. Since we're in a comma video, you should probably be guessing, maybe there's an issue with commas in this sentence. There is. So I was arrested in Las Vegas, Nevada for stalking Elvis. Where do you think those commas might go? Let's find out. Ah, look, I put the commas in red, so I hope that you can see them. So you can see that there's a comma after Las Vegas and there's a comma after Nevada. A lot of people forget that comma after Nevada. They are perfectly comfortable putting one in between Las Vegas and Nevada. They just forget that second one. Okay, so what's the rule on this? Well, you use a comma to separate a city from a state or a city from a country. So just like in the example here, I was chased around London, England, and Paris, France, by an angry chihuahua. It happens. So you can see that that's where those commas go. Don't forget that second comma. That is a comma that is quite often overlooked and forgotten. So if it appears in the middle of a sentence, please don't forget to remember that the comma goes after the state or the country also in that situation. All right, you feeling pretty good? Feeling pretty good? That was a good warm-up, right? Let's try another rule. How about this sentence right here? All right, he realized on October 12th, 2019, that his chihuahua was plotting to kill him. Yeah, angry chihuahua. Where do you think the commas go there? Let's find out. Okay, look at this one. He realized on October 12th, 2019, comma. See, the comma goes after the 2019. It's also easily forgotten, just like in the previous rule. So don't forget to put that second comma. If it appears mid-sentence, that's where it's going to go. So of course he realized that his chihuahua was plotting to kill him. Now, so what's the rule with that? Well, you're going to use a comma to separate the day of the month from the year. If it appears in the middle of the sentence, like I said, you want to use it after the year also. However, look at the example right here that says it was in October 2019 that his chihuahua killed him. No comma is necessary if you omit the day of the month. So that is a pretty simple and easy rule to remember. I hope I started you off nice and easy. Let's move into something that's a little bit more challenging and actually has caused quite a bit of controversy in this world. It is something called the Oxford comma. Wow, look at this. I have two possible choices. I have one using what is called the Oxford comma, and I have one not using what is called the Oxford comma. So let's take a second here and figure out what the Oxford comma is. Well, first of all, there's a whole bunch of controversy about this one little guy, and he is that last comma that separates a series of things, usually a series of 3 items. You don't start using commas until you have a series of 3 or more items. It's that last little comma, and you can see in this first example here where the comma is in front of the word and after the word idle. That guy right there is the Oxford comma. There's a lot of controversy behind it because people like me, for example, who have an English, comparative literature, law background, really love the Oxford comma. We think that it provides an immense amount of clarity. It avoids ambiguity. And from a lawyer's perspective, it can help you avoid lawsuits because it helps you make your sentence as clear as humanly possible. Then there's entire industries who don't like the Oxford comma. They think that it's unnecessary. They think that in some cases it can actually make things a little bit more confusing, but mostly they're using it to save space. And the folks in that industry, and they're not wrong, it's just they have a different viewpoint. Usually they're journalists, they're publishers, they're looking to save space, and they're trying to be as simple as possible and let the sentence flow. But let's look at the difference here, and I'll show you from my perspective, from a lawyer's perspective, why the Oxford comma is so special to we lawyers. We love them so much. Okay, so I stalked Elvis, comma, a strikingly handsome K-pop idol, comma, and a vicious chihuahua. So that makes it very clear, I think, that I stalked each one of those 3 things, okay? Now, let's look at it without the Oxford comma. I stalked Elvis, comma, a strikingly handsome K-pop idol and a vicious chihuahua. Now, that could be interpreted 2 ways. People who understand that, hey, sometimes you don't use the Oxford comma, it could mean that you stalked each one of those things. But those things that come after the comma could also be descriptors of the thing that precedes the comma. Elvis precedes the comma. So it may be that we're saying, I stalked Elvis, who is a strikingly handsome K-pop idol and also a vicious chihuahua. You're calling him those things. You're saying Elvis is those things. So because it can be interpreted 2 different ways, lawyers find it to be ambiguous, unclear. So we like to use the Oxford comma when we mean that we are using it to describe a series of 3. Okay, if we aren't using it as a lawyer, you would know that those things are actually describing what came before the comma. So there's nothing wrong with doing it either way. However, it does provide some confusion for students. I can say, in my opinion, if you use the Oxford comma and you aren't in an industry that generally avoids it or says that they don't want you to use it. For example, if you're a journalism major, or if you're going into a field like that doesn't particularly care for the Oxford comma, don't use it. But if you're in every other field, it's always going to be safe to use it because all it's doing is just providing that extra little bit of clarity. Okay? All right, so let's look at using that Oxford comma in a series. And I've given you another example here. Elvis has left the building, comma, the United States, comma, and Earth. Now, if you take the Oxford comma out of that particular sentence, it doesn't really create the ambiguity that we had in the previous example. Look, Elvis has left the building. the United States and Earth. Well, the United States and Earth really isn't possibly describing building. It should be pretty clear that those are three things that Elvis has left. Does that make sense? Okay, awesome. So here's the rule right here. You use commas to separate words or word groups in a simple series of 3 or more items. The final comma before and or is called the Oxford comma, and technically it is optional, and it's going to be mostly dependent on the industry that you are in. All right, so just to be clear, let's review when to use the Oxford comma and when not to use it. So when to use the Oxford comma is going to be if you're doing any kind of scientific, technical, or especially legal writing. Okay, you're going to use it to resolve that ambiguity that I talked about before. And also if it better matches spoken English. We call that the cadence. It's how something sounds. If you say the sentence aloud, instead of just writing it and never speaking it, if you actually say it and it feels like there should be a pause there or a comma there, go ahead and stick that in. All right. When not to use it is inconsistent with your field, with your industry, and the main example would be journalism. When it would add ambiguity or the last two items are actually one thing, they go together like a peanut butter and jelly, okay, type of thing. Those two things actually kind of go together, then you wouldn't want to use it. Also, and it's the main reason I believe that journalists and publishers originally started getting rid of it, was to save precious space in print materials. All right, let's move on to our next comma. Take a look at this. Where do you think a comma might go in that sentence? Let's find out. Ah, this was a trick question, my friends. You notice I didn't put one of those fancy red commas in there. It's because you don't need one. And let's analyze why. When you are using commas with adjectives, it can be a little bit of a tricky situation. Okay, so this particular sentence, kind of the way it's structured, doesn't lend itself to commas. So I stalked a strikingly handsome K-pop idol. Well, let's start with idol, because that is ultimately what is being modified by most of these words, right? Idol is a noun, okay? K-pop is an adjective modifying idol, and it works with idol to form what we like to call an adjective-noun pair. A K-pop idol is a thing. It's actually a person, but it's a thing, okay? A K-pop idol. And so once you have that adjective-noun pair, the thing that comes before it, is probably going to be another adjective, right? And that's because K-pop is technically an adjective, but it formed a pair. So now we're going to move backwards in the sentence. We're going to look at the word handsome. It's an adjective modifying that adjective-noun pair. So handsome, K-pop idol. You do not need a comma there to separate it, because it's like it's an adjective standing by itself. It's not like it's two anymore. Does that make sense? And if we move even further back, we have that word strikingly. You notice it's got an ly. We can probably look at some videos in the future that I might put out that talk about adverbs and how they work. But that's technically an adverb modifying the word handsome. So because it's not an adjective, there's no comma there. It's, you're not just handsome, you are strikingly handsome. Okay, you see how strikingly is modifying the word handsome. And so if we go through that, there's no comma necessary. All right, so you got that? All right, so let's look at some tests to figure out, hey, do I need to put a comma here or not? Am I dealing with one of these situations like this strikingly handsome K-pop idol thing? Well, there's two different tests. The first one is called the order test. This is where you take the adjectives and you kind of flip them around. And if they don't sound good anymore, if it doesn't sound like natural English anymore, if it sounds weird, you're not going to put a comma there. So look at this. I stalked a strikingly K-pop handsome idol. That doesn't make any sense, right? Okay. So that's a big hint. It's a big clue. Hey, I don't need any commas in this sentence. What about adding the word and in between the adjective and the other adjective? I stalked a strikingly handsome and K-pop idol. Yeah, that doesn't make sense either. So you can kind of put the word and see if it makes sense It doesn't feel right. I have provided in the description of this video a link where you can go get some more information about how adjectives and how they are matched with one another. Because for somebody who's a native English speaker, these sentences don't feel right. They don't sound right. So we understand that naturally. However, if this language isn't your first language, you may not get that same feeling that I get whenever I see this. So it's because adjectives, we have learned since we were little kids that they actually take a certain order, and there are some adjectives that are more important than others. So the link that I provided isn't just going to be helpful to people who don't have English as their first language, but people who do have English as their first language, and you're still trying to, this is a gray area for you, and this is where you have the problem is putting these commas in between adjectives. Let's check out another sentence here, okay? So this one is, Jimin is a friendly, talented man, okay? Now that one doesn't have that strikingly handsome K-pop idol thing going on, although Jimin is a strikingly handsome K-pop idol, okay? We've got friendly and talented. So let's take a look at where the comma might go there. And here we go. You can see that awesome red comma goes in between the words friendly and talented. We can break this down the same way we did with the other sentence that we had. And in this case, man is what is being modified. Man is a noun. Talented is an adjective modifying man. But here you notice friendly is also an adjective modifying man. See, we didn't have that so much before because we had created a noun pair, we had an adverb, we had all kinds of things going on in the other sentence. This one just literally has, you could say Jimin is a man. Friendly and talented are the things that are describing man, okay? We've put a comma in between them. The other reason why we put a comma in between them is because friendly and talented are equally weighted. That thing I was just talking about, that we as native English speakers, we have a feel for it already. Those who don't, sometimes it doesn't make as much sense, but you think about when you describe somebody as friendly, that's describing their personality, who they are. Talented is also describing something about their personality and who they are. They are equally weighted adjectives, so they take a comma in between because you can reverse the order. And we're going to do that on the next slide, which is right here, okay? So Jimin is a friendly, talented man. If you reverse the order test, you say Jimin is a talented, friendly man, it means exactly the same thing. It doesn't give you that feeling that there's something wrong with the sentence like we had before, right? And also we can use the and test. We can add and in between and see how that feels. Jimin is a friendly and talented man. Or we could say Jimin is a talented and friendly man. Do you see how that feels good? It feels the same. The reason why it feels good and it feels the same is because those adjectives are equally weighted adjectives and they are describing the same thing. Hope that makes sense because this is one that gives a lot of people some trouble. All right, so what's the rule? Let's finish this section up. All right, so I stalked the talented, friendly K-pop idol. You notice that in this particular sentence, comma is just between talented and friendly. K-pop idol, remember, it's that adjective noun pair that we talked about before. All right, so what's the rule? Well, you're going to use a comma to separate two adjectives when the adjectives are interchangeable. You can check to see if they're interchangeable by switching the order or inserting and in between the adjectives. If it still means the same thing, then you want to use a comma. And as I stated before, you want to see the video description for some useful links on the order of adjectives. All right, so what about commas with independent clauses? So I'm going to ask you, which one of these two sentences is correct? Take a second. All right, let's find out. They're both wrong. Yes, I know. I love to give you these trick questions. So in the first one, it says, I followed Jim, he ran away. And the second one is, I followed Jim and he ran away. What's wrong with them? Well, let's find out. There we go. We're finding out now. Let's look at the first one. I followed Jim, he ran away. When you see this, you should go, oh no, this is the dreaded Comma splice. Yes, it's the dreaded comma splice. You'll see that written on your paper. Your teacher like comma splice, and you're like, oh, great. I don't know what that is. I don't splice genes. I'm not a geneticist. I'm not creating a monster comma. Speaking of that, is there a comma behind me? Like, really, you would tell me if there was a comma behind me. Yes. Those hybrid comma splice genes. Okay. Anyway, it's also called a run-on sentence, okay? So how do we fix this situation? Basically, what you've done is you have two independent clauses. These are things that could be sentences all by themselves. They could stand on their own, and instead of making them sentences all by, you took away their glory, you took away their strength, and you said, you're not a whole sentence. I'm just gonna put a comma in between you. You can't do that. You've taken away its power. That's very mean. So how do we correct this? Now, first of all, first thing we can do is give it its glory, make it two sentences. So I followed Jim in period. He ran away, period. You can see they are two full, complete sentences. Why are you putting a comma in between them? Yeah, that's the problem with the comma splice. Now, it's also called a run-on sentence. Number two, how do we fix it? You can add the word and. I followed Jim, comma, and he ran away. If you add the word and in between two independent clauses, you need to place a comma there, and that will be grammatically correct. So it's another way to finish excuse me. It's another way to correct a comma splice or a run-on sentence is to actually add a comma and the word and in front of the second independent clause. And then another way is that you can kind of change the feel of the sentence. You can add a dependent clause in front of one of the independent clauses. So in this case, I did after I followed Jim and comma, he ran away. He ran really fast. But you can see, of course, there's a comma after the dependent clause, the dependent clause being after I followed Jimin. Okay, because that's not a sentence by itself. There needs to be more to that sentence. So that's why it needs a comma. And we'll talk about dependent clauses coming up in this video. I know you're so excited. Me too. All right. Now, let's look at sentence number two. Well, I already kind of gave you the answer, right? It was one of the corrections for the other one. But I followed Jim and he ran away. I left the comma out. That's why it was wrong. It has two independent clauses joined by a connection. It requires a comma after the first independent clause. There it is in the correction. I followed Jim and comma, and he ran away. You could also do the I followed Jim and period, he ran away. Instead of just adding the comma. I don't know why you wouldn't just add the comma, but sometimes for stylistic purposes, you want to go ahead and separate those two independent clauses out. Okay, I hope you're getting a good feel for this. I hope you're like, yes, finally, somebody explained that to me. Again, because I forgot when my teacher explained it to me in the past. And that's why I'm reviewing and that's why I'm watching this video. I can almost read your thoughts. It's scary, right? I should open up a psychic hotline. Anyway, let's moving on to using commas with independent clauses rule. Okay, so you can see I followed Jimin and scared him. Now, our rule is that in sentences where two independent clauses are joined by connectors like and, or, and but, you want to put a comma at the end of the first clause. However, if the subject does not appear in front of the second verb, a comma is generally unnecessary. Okay, so if you said I followed Jimin and I scared him, see the subject is I, and if I repeat it after the word and, now I've created a second independent clause. In this particular case, I didn't do that. If you look at the first part, I followed Jimin, right? That's a sentence that can stand on its own. And then I have the word and then after that, I have something that is not an independent clause. It cannot stand on its own. Scared him is not a sentence. Therefore, it is not required to have a comma there. A lot of people still try to throw the comma in there, and I just want to shake their paper out. That's something that happens. Okay, moving on. All right, so how about using commas with interrupters and introductory words? Okay, these are things that's just sort of like, boom, I'm interrupting you, ha ha ha, and it's your friend that always talks over you when you're trying to tell a story and they just keep cutting in. Yeah, they need commas around them. That's what interrupters, they just say, hey, you know what, I'm gonna put commas around you because you keep interrupting me. That's a really funny English joke. a joke that you can use to make people think that you're funny because you spend all your time thinking about English and teaching and things. Anyway, so that's fine. You can use my joke and I won't copyright you or anything. You can just go ahead and use that because it's hilarious. Now, over here, let's take a look at these two sentences and see if you guys are as savvy as that joke. Are you ready? Because we're going to go into the next slide and see where the commas are supposed to go there. Oh, looky where the commas go. The magic red comma has reappeared. I am, comma, by the way, interruption, right? It's interrupting the sentence. Not worried that my chihuahua will kill me. I'm not worried. I'm so much stronger than him, although he is possessed and he has special powers, supernatural powers. But anyway, I am, by the way. You see how by the way is an interrupter? If we pick that up, take it out of the sentence, that sentence still makes sense without it. You can see, I will prove to you because I will say it now. I am not worried that my chihuahua will kill me. I took the by the way out and the sentence still made sense. That's a way that you can test these interrupters, okay? Can you remove it and still have the rest of the remaining sentence make sense? All right, so we're gonna put commas around interrupters. We're also going to put commas after introductory words. This is just a word like, for example, in this one, it says, no, comma, I am not afraid that Elvis and my chihuahua will find out about my obsession with Jimin. I am not afraid of that. So you see how I put no here and I put a comma. A single word like no, well, yes, therefore, however, those words, those introductory single words by themselves, comma, you want to set it off, okay? Let's check out the rule. The rule is right here and it says, use commas to set off expressions that interrupt the sentence flow. Okay, they just sort of interrupted like your friend with commas around them, right? Nevertheless, after all, by the way, on the other hand, however, those are nice examples that I put right here for you. And you're going to use a comma after certain words that introduce a sentence. And I listed some of those for you. They're listed here again. And you can see that in this particular example, I put it after the word yes. Yes, comma, my chihuahua has killed before. That's why I'm a little bit scared. Just a tiny bit. All right, you ready to move on? Because I know you're like, oh my gosh, I have so much common knowledge now. I'm not ashamed anymore. Okay? Okay, using commas with names and titles. Now, in this particular situation, I just went ahead and I'm not going to test you on it. I'm just going to show you where they go. So, in the first example, Elvis, comma, please don't leave the building. Okay? If you say somebody's name and you are directing whatever you're saying after is directed at them. I'm talking to Elvis in this sentence. So I'm like, Elvis, comma. Yes, I need a comma there because I'm talking to Elvis. And the rest of the sentence pertains to him. Please don't leave the building. Okay, so that's using it with names. What about, in this particular example, where the name comes mid-sentence? Okay, comma, Jimin, comma. So Jimin's going to get commas around him because he's so adorable. So he's going to get commas around him. So, okay, Jimin, it's okay to stop hiding from me now. It really is okay, Jimin. You can stop hiding from me now. And my chihuahua. See? So nice. So you can see you're going to put the commas around them instead of just after them. Now, you're also going to put commas around nicknames. So in this example here, I have Jimin, old friend, don't run away. And you can see how I put the commas around old friend. He's not old. I'm way older than him in real life, but you know, it's okay. He's an old friend. It's like we go way back from the time when I started, you know, stalking him and making him nervous. But anyway, okay, so the next one is whenever we have a title. So you guys all know doctors like to put that MD after their name, right? So in this example, I have Crazy K9, comma, MD. You're going to put a comma before their title. Also, if something like that were to appear, something that comes after someone's name, like junior, senior, MD, Esquire, something like that comes after their name, you're also going to, if it appears mid-sentence, you're going to put a comma after it. So my example here, Crazy K9, comma, Junior, comma, is here because it appears mid-sentence. So it's just like the date or a country or state, I'm putting a comma after it also because it appears mid-sentence. Make sense? All right, excellent. So here are the rules right here. You're going to use the commas to set off the name, term of endearment, or title of a person who is directly addressed in your sentence. Okay, use a comma between a last name and junior, senior, or a degree or a title. Whenever it appears mid-sentence, you're also going to add that title. All right, you ready for the next one? I know I sure am. All right, because it's commas with dependent clauses. Yes, see how exciting this is? I know you guys are just as thrilled and excited about commas as I am. You're watching this video going like, this is great. This is the greatest video I've ever seen because I'm so enlightened now. I feel so enlightened about commas that I'm like a comma guru at this point. So dependent clauses. A dependent clause we've already mentioned when we were talking about independent clauses, because independent clauses are sentences that can stand on their own. So your dependent clauses, they're like clingy and they need something because they can't stand on their own. They really should just go out and get a job or something, but they're not. They're just clingy. They're just hanging on those dependent clauses. There's just something not right about them, and that's why they're so needy. So let's look at some examples. What do you think? Where do you think the dependent clause is in this particular sentence? I will give you a hint before we move to the next slide. A lot of times when you have a dependent clause, it is followed by an independent clause, one that can stand on its own. All right, with that, a little bit of knowledge, let's find out where the comma goes here. Wow, look at that. The independent clause was the last three words of that sentence. Let me know. That can stand on its own, all by itself. Let me know. Yes, that is a clause that has a job. It's independent. It can stand on its own. It doesn't need you. Okay. Now, what comes before that starts with the word if, which is very common in our dependent clause land, is they start with the word if because they're iffy. Okay. So if you find out why my chihuahua wants to kill me, you see how if you stop there, it's like, yeah. Then what? What am I supposed to do? Because if is usually running around with then, an if-then type of conditional statement. You know what I'm talking about? You've seen them. I know you have. We all have. Yeah, I donate money to help the if-then. But anyway, you see the if. So if you find out why my chihuahua wants to kill me, can't stand on its own. It is not an independent clause. Can't be a sentence all by itself. It needs the comma. And what follows then gives it that support that it needs. Okay? So let's look at the rule, okay, for dependent clauses. Use a comma when starting a sentence with a dependent clause. Often, however, you will find that no comma is necessary when you start a sentence with the independent clause followed by the dependent clause. Remember how I said the tip was the independent clause might be at the end of the sentence. Okay, and so you know kind of what came before it was dependent on it. If you reverse that order, strangely, if you reverse that order, a lot of times you don't need the comma. Let's check out this example right here, right? Let me know if you find out why my chihuahua wants to kill me. You don't need a comma there because the let me know, the independent clause part of the sentence came first. He's like, I can support this whole sentence all by myself. That's why I'm in the first place. That's why I started. All right, you guys ready to talk about another one? I know you are. We are going to talk about non-essential words, clauses, and phrases. Don't you want somebody to call you non-essential? I don't need you. That's what they're saying. You know that's what they're saying. They're saying, I don't need you. You're not essential. You don't mean anything. Okay? You're a non-essential word, clause, and phrase. So let's check these guys out right here. Okay? What do you think is non-essential in these examples? Just look at it for a second. All right, I know you've looked at it. Let's find out. Woo! There's the fancy red commas just popped up like magic, right? The Chihuahua, comma, knowing it was late, hurried to get the poison. Oh, he's sneaky, isn't he? He's a sneaky Chihuahua. He's going to go get poison. Now, if you take the part of the sentence that I have commas around, the sentence still means the same thing. The Chihuahua hurried to get the poison. Well, that's still really important information. We want to know that he's rushing, okay? But he's rushing because he knew it was late. So it's just sort of like an extra, it's considered a non-essential phrase, or non-essential clause. It's like knowing it was late. You don't really need to have that in there to make the sentence make sense or to convey your meaning. And that's why it takes commas, okay? The Chihuahua, knowing it was late, hurried to get the poison. All right, let's look at the next sentence. My best friend, Elvis, arrived. Now, the reason why that is considered a non-essential word is because when I use the word best in front of friend, it means I just have one of those, okay? If I just said my best friend arrived, I would still be talking about Elvis, wouldn't I? My best friend, Elvis, arrived. I could just say Elvis arrived, and people would still know that he was my best friend because he is. Elvis is my best friend. But you see how it's just best friend. You only have one best friend. Therefore, Elvis is actually not essential to that because the sentence will still mean the same thing if you take Elvis out of it. So you can say my best friend arrived. It still means Elvis. Okay? So let's look at that in combination with this one below, and you notice there's no fancy red comma in there. Why is there no fancy red comma in there? Well, there's no fancy red comma in there because I have more than one friend. Yes. So my friend Jimin likes to sing. I have more than one friend, which is really nice, which may or may not be true, but I'm using it for the purposes of this video so I can explain this to you. All right. So when I don't see a comma there, it means I have more than one friend, and so it is essential that I tell you which friend I'm talking about. And in that case, I don't use commas. This is a common mistake, okay? So my friend Jimin likes to sing because I have more than one friend, and to make it clear to those who are reading this sentence that I'm actually talking about my friend Jimin, not my friend Namjoon or my friend Elvis or one of my other friends, my pretend friends I have, I need to say his name. So if I take the word Jimin out and I just say my friend likes to sing, it could mean any one of my friends. So that test also shows, hey, I have to have Jimin in there to make sure it's clear that I'm talking about that particular friend. Does that make sense? I hope so. I really do. Okay, now let's look at these examples here, okay? My cat Maya knows why my Chihuahua wants to kill me. She's got some inside information, Maya. She does. So I've been interrogating her under very bright lights. And she's been talking. So, but you can also see in the second sentence, I said my cat, Maya, knows why my Chihuahua wants to kill me. This is going to blow your mind for a second. Both of these sentences are correct. One sentence means that I only have one cat, and that cat is Maya. The other sentence means I have more than one cat, so it's essential that I identify which cat that I am talking about. And we know that I'm dealing with essential things. I don't need commas. The commas only go around the non-essential things. So take a look at these two, and I want you to decide which one means that I have more than one cat. If you said the first one, you would be correct. Because if I just said my cat knows why my Chihuahua wants to kill me, and I have more than one cat, it would be essential for me to tell you which cat I was talking about. Otherwise, you would not know. So sentence number one says, or it tells the reader, oh, she's got more than one cat. That's why she hasn't put commas around Maya like she did in sentence number two. Sentence number two, if I take Maya out and I say my cat knows why my Chihuahua wants to kill me, if you know me, you know I've only got the one cat, and her name is Maya. So in this situation, whenever I say Maya, her name actually becomes non-essential. So I have put commas around it. Does that make sense? I really hope it does, because this is one of the most common errors that students make when they're trying to, get their commas right for the teachers. They're not getting red marks all over their paper, right? Okay, so here's the rules. Non-essential words, clauses, and phrases must be enclosed by commas when occurring mid-sentence. The closing comma is called the appositive comma, so it's a nice vocabulary word for you. If something or someone is sufficiently identified, the description that follows is considered non-essential, okay, like best friend. You didn't need Elvis because he was sufficiently described, okay? And then it should be surrounded by commas in that situation. All right, I really hope we nailed that one. I know that we did. All right, what's next? All right, you ready for the next one? I know that I am ready for the next one. Here it is. Right now, we're going to be talking about using commas with statements, questions, and contrasting ideas in the same sentence. Whatever does that mean? Well, let's look at these examples here, and I want you to think for a second, where would the commas go in those three sentences? All right, so let's find out. Here you go. Our red commas have magically appeared, and this is where I'm actually separating a statement from a question. Often that question appears at the end. Just like in sentence number 1, it says, your name is Jimin, isn't it? So isn't it is a question. It stands by itself. In that case, we're going to put a comma. So we are separating the statement, your name is Jimin, from the question, isn't it? So we would require a comma there. What about the second sentence? It's the same situation. We are asking a question, but we're asking a question with one word instead of a phrase or clause. That Chihuahua killed a man, correct? That's something we lawyers say whenever we're cross-examining somebody. The Chihuahua killed a man, correct? You're asking that in the cross-examination part of a trial. But anyway, all right, so that requires a comma because you are separating the statement from the question. And then the last example is where we are separating contrasting ideas. So this is my spy kit, not yours. And you see how we naturally pause when we say it too. This is my spy kit, not yours. We pause there. The comma is helping us represent that pause. It's also helping us understand that we are separating these two contrasting ideas, okay? This is mine, not yours. Keep your hands to yourself, buddy. All right, so the rules here are use a comma to separate a statement from a question. Use a comma to separate contrasting parts of a sentence. And I have a couple more examples here. First one, that Chihuahua has killed again, hasn't he? Yeah, you see where the comma goes before hasn't he? And in the second sentence, Jimin was running from you, not with you. It's contrasting ideas, and we're going to use that comma to separate those lovely contrasting ideas. I think he was running with me. He was. He wasn't running away. All right, let's check out what's next. All right, so we're going to use commas now with introductory terms followed by a series of items and the term etc. Whew. That sounds crazy. It's really not, okay? It's actually just a lot of words that mean something fairly simple. Check out these two sentences and see if you can figure out where those commas might go. Got it? I think you do. Let's find out. And there's our crazy red commas. And here they are. Woo! Give them a round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. I give them a standing ovation because look how many commas I was able to put in this first one. All right. I want to shake it out. No, actually, all those belong. Don't shake it out. Elvis has 3 things in his suitcase. Comma. Namely, comma. Do you see the word namely there? That is an introductory term, and it's about to be followed by a series of items. Okay? So, that introductory term, namely, is followed by a series of items and the things that are in his suitcase. And they are a white jumpsuit, hairspray, and sunglasses. Exactly what you might find in Elvis's suitcase. Now, let me ask you this question. What is that little guy, that comma that is before the word and? It's an Oxford comma. You know that. I bet you looked at it and says, Yeah, she's using an Oxford comma there. Yeah. Yeah, she likes the Oxford comma, that's why it's there. Okay, just that was a little bit of review for you. Second sentence, all right, barking, comma, growling, comma, biting, comma. We have a series of items here. Then we have the word etc. etc. period. Always put a comma before etc. and after etc. if etc. appears mid-sentence. Okay, sometimes etc. is at the end of a sentence and then the period is the period and you don't need a comma after that. But when it appears like this, you want to make sure you put commas around it, okay? And those are all part of my Chihuahua's charm, those things that are listed there and using the word etc. Okay, make sense? I hope so. All right, here we go. There's our rules. Use a comma before and after certain introductory words or terms. And then I list them, some examples, namely, i.e., that is, e.g., for instance, when they are followed by a series of items, just like what was in Elvis's suitcase, remember? A comma should precede the term, etc., and it should come after it if it appears mid-sentence. And here we have an example where etc. appears at the end of the sentence. I have to keep my Chihuahua away from Elvis, comma, Jimin, comma, the mailman, comma, etc. And in that case, we don't have a comma after the word etc. because it's not appearing mid-sentence. So don't put a comma after it. Stop it. Don't do that. Okay, next. All right. So, woo. Okay, next. So using commas with quotations. All right. So this is one that is, you see it all the time, and this is really confusing for a lot of people. They're like, where do I place the comma? Look at these examples and think to yourself, I've got these quotations, these direct quotations. Where am I going to place the commas? Are you ready? Let's check out the answers. And here they are. All right. You can see that in that first example, there's only one comma, and it comes after Elvis said. Elvis said, comma. Elvis said is introducing that direct quote. So you're going to put a comma after it. Those are the rules. And you notice that the comma is directly after the word said and before the quotation marks. I have a lot of students who aren't really sure where those quotation marks go. Where do they go in relation to the comma? In this particular situation, it's going directly after the word said, okay? And then you're going to have the quotation mark, and you can see at the end there the period and then the quotation marks. Okay, so I know we're not doing quotation marks and period here, but I might as well say it because we're looking at a sentence with it in. Let's check out sentence number 2. Why, comma? And you see the comma goes before the quotation mark. Now, why is there a comma there? Well, it's because it's interrupted with the phrase, I asked. We could take I asked out and it would say, why does Jimin run from me? Why does he? But we've interrupted it with I said, because we want to say who's saying that. Okay, so why and then comma, because remember that's interrupting. Okay, that's another reason why we need commas there. And you notice the comma goes before the quotation mark. And then after I asked, just like in Elvis said, and just like after a regular thing that's interrupting mid-sentence, you're going to put a comma after the word asked. You're going to put it before the quotation mark. Does Jimin run from me? Question mark and quotation marks. Does that make sense? Awesome. Okay, that's how that works. So let's look at the rules. You're going to use commas to interrupt direct quotations. If the quotation comes before he said, she argued, they stated, or a similar attribution, you're going to end the quoted material with a comma instead of its regular punctuation, even if it is only one word. Okay, and you can see up here, I've given you 2 more examples so we can get a little bit more practice with this. The Chihuahua is behind you, he said. Okay, so it might look like if we didn't have he said after that, the Chihuahua is behind you. That would be a period, right? But we're not going to put the period there because it's followed by he said, which identifies who is making that direct quote. So we're going to put a comma there before the quotation mark, and then he said. So that's how the placement goes. In the second sentence, we just have one word, stop, Jimin said. Why does he always tell me to stop following him? I don't know. And you'll notice that we have stop, comma, there's the quotation marks, and Jim and said. Okay, so these are compliant with the rules, and it's how you want to use commas. It is a correct usage of commas. All right, so I hope you really enjoyed this. This is a great resource for you to check out. It's the Blue Book of Grammar and Punctuation. I happen to have the 11th edition laying around. Any of the editions are great because grammar really doesn't change that much over time. And if you enjoyed my video, I hope you got something from it. Please don't forget to always proof and edit your work. I want to thank you so much for watching. And again, if you liked what you saw, please like it and subscribe. Thank you so much. Have a great day.